Hi, everyone. Good afternoon. My name is Dr. Rachel Bussman, and I'm a clinical psychologist at the Child Mind Institute. We are a national nonprofit that supports children and families with gold standard mental health care, advice, and resources, all online and accessible to everyone. You can learn more about the resources that we have available during the time of the coronavirus crisis, including telehealth evaluations and treatment, by visiting childmind.org/coronavirus. Today, we are continuing our Facebook Live series and talking about parenting during this coronavirus crisis. And I'd like to answer your questions that you pose. We are also pulling the questions from our last Facebook Lives so we can answer them about anything that you may be wondering about. You can post your questions in the feed, and we'll also be posting some links to some helpful resources on childmind.org. Also, if you look up our group on Facebook for parenting in the time of coronavirus, we will be sending some resources during this Facebook Live broadcast that we are not able to just paste into the feed of this broadcast. So we're going to jump right in because we have a lot of questions and I really want to get a chance to answer them. One of the questions that's come up in a couple of the last Facebooks and we want to address right away relates to single parents. And we want to acknowledge that there are a lot of different compositions of families out there struggling with this coronavirus crisis right now, and single parents are certainly one of these makeups of families. So we definitely understand the unique challenges that come when a family has one adult in that household, and that it's really impossible to address all of the needs at any one given time. And so we want to make sure to answer some questions about how to manage being the only adult in a household of maybe one or more children, and also post some resources for you. So the first thing that I'll say is there have been some comments and requests for specific resources, including daily schedules and activities that would be easily accessible to single parents who may not have the time to go looking on Pinterest boards or other web resources or websites that might have this information. So we actually do have this information for you, and we're going to compile some of these things, including a daily schedule for younger children and a daily suggested schedule for older children, and also some tip sheets that go along with this in our Facebook group, Parenting in the Time of Coronavirus. So that will be made available. We are also working now on content specifically designed for this request for activities that are already ready-made and ideas of activities, crafts, and resources that are downloadable and producible and readily available to families. So we're going to be working on that. So one of the questions that definitely comes up around this is, how am I supposed to manage doing the laundry and doing chores and also helping my children with learning when I'm by myself and I'm also having to take care of my own work or my own meetings or phone calls? So the first thing definitely is to recognize that that is a huge task and that it's unique in its own ways. And so that the expectations should be modified so that, for example, if school is asking for 5 things to get done for classwork, recognizing that that may not be possible on any given day, and that it would be really helpful to communicate with school and let them know what your unique situation is so that they're aware that you're parenting on your own and that you may need more support, an extension for certain work, or just some downward modifications. So for some teachers, just them knowing the situation might be enough that they might be able to offer some additional assistance. Maybe they can offer an additional face-to-face chat time with your child to help them through a particular subject or task. They also might be very inclined to provide an extension on any deadline, especially one that needs parent attention with the work that's happening with the child. I know for me, I have an assignment for my son, and we kind of just found out about it earlier in the week, yesterday, and I reached out and asked if it would be okay if we had an extension. And I've reminded myself on numerous occasions that as a parent myself for a student in this 3rd grade class, my questions and my requests are just as valid as other people, so that it's really important to know that reaching out to a teacher or to someone at school and saying, I need an extension, I need a little bit of more flexibility, is completely reasonable and likely will be supported. Another thing related to doing chores and needing to get certain tasks done. Again, when you have limited resources of time and person power, it's really hard to be able to get all the things done that you may be used to doing. So, for example, laundry or putting away, keeping the kitchen clean or keeping the children's room clean. Those might be things that are easier to do when the house isn't full. And so it may be that as a parent, prioritizing the things that really do need to happen and being a bit forgiving with the things that maybe aren't as important. Similarly, your kids, especially the ones that are old enough to be helpful, can absolutely help with certain tasks, even if it's not something that they've done in the past. So I definitely have gotten my son involved in some activities that probably could be faster done myself in some occasions, but also things that would be helpful for him to help me with, like putting away some of my laundry or helping me to make my bed. So I think that's also something that could be kept in mind, which would be include your kids in some activities that they might actually be helpful doing, and really maybe strategizing which things absolutely need to get done versus things that could be sort of triaged, for lack of a better word, to sort of middle burner or back burner kind of activities. So if you're just joining us, this is a reminder that this is our Facebook Live at the Childmind Institute on parenting during the coronavirus. And right now we're talking about being a single parent. We are working on content now, and we'll be getting that out to you in terms of your specific requests for a daily schedule, some easy activities, and things that don't require too much additional clicking. So we are going to be putting some of those resources out for you, and we also will be collecting more and have more content in the coming days. So I have a couple other questions coming in. So one question that also was really very interesting was that a comment about children who are incorporating some of the themes of coronavirus into their play. So sometimes their characters get sick, sometimes they even die. The question is, should I join or guide their play or let them play it out? So this is a really, really fabulous question, and I'm so glad that someone asked it. I'm sure that you're not the only one in asking it. Other people are seeing this for sure. It is really normal for kids to play out in their play what is happening in their life and what's happening in their world. So I wouldn't be worried that you might be seeing this in their play. And I think this is kind of a situation of both and. It's meaning you can both kind of hang back and observe what happens in the play and join if it makes sense. So one thing that's great is to allow kids to explore their creativity and sort of figure life out through their play. On the other hand, joining and guiding can be really helpful, but we want to make sure not to take over and completely insert ourselves so that we're the ones who are playing and directing the interactions. But also, if you just kind of hang back and observe and you notice anything that you want to correct or ask your child about later, you absolutely can. So it's totally reasonable to say something like, hey, Ben, I saw you, playing with your brother earlier, and you guys looked like you were having such a great time playing with your Legos or your dolls. I kind of noticed that your characters were getting sick. And I'm just wondering if you have any questions or what happened to that character. And that's where you can have a conversation with your child if they can talk to you, if they're old enough to have a conversation. And you could just correct any misinformation they might have. So, for example, if a lot of their characters are dying, that's an opportunity for you to give information about the coronavirus, what we know about the virus, how it's transmitted, and also how we're staying safe and cautious. So if you were, on the other hand, joining in your child's play and they were playing and someone was coughing or they were sick, you could say, hey, I've brought some soap for you and I wanted to give it to your doll. Or we just got home from playing outside, so we're going to go over and wash our hands. So I think there are multiple ways you can handle it, and such a fabulous question. Another question that's coming through right now is any tips for older kids who are having a difficult time organizing all of the information that's coming in from multiple teachers or multiple sources of, sort of information streams. So thank you again for that question, because I think while we've been talking a lot about anxiety, a lot of this is normal reactions to stress. right? So it seems reasonable if your teenager or your older child isn't really used to getting multiple emails from multiple teachers. That probably doesn't happen on a daily basis. Maybe your child's used to going to sort of an interactive Blackboard or website where they get their assignments, but they might not be used to multiple email chains or multiple communications. And so I think it's really helpful to observe your child. And if they are overwhelmed, have a conversation with them. Because I've been saying in these Facebook Lives, I think it's really important to ask your child what is overwhelming them or stressing them out before you can move to a problem-solving mode. So your teen or your child might say something like, well, I just have a lot of emails and I feel like I need to respond to all of them, versus I have a lot of emails and now I have a lot of assignments, right? So it may be a simple correction that if the child's getting a lot of emails and they don't actually require a response, you could just let them know that, hey, you're getting a lot of emails from your teacher, but you don't have to respond to all of them. They're just giving you information. Versus, yeah, it actually seems like you are getting some more work. Let's figure out what's hard, what is assigned and due tomorrow versus due at the end of the week. And then a really important link might be going right back to the teacher or teachers or a team leader or advisor to say, hey, my child is really struggling with the volume of emails, and we'd love to have a way to sort of systematize this or streamline this in a way that's not overwhelming for my child. So really, really great questions, and I'm so glad that you're asking this. So now we're getting a question about younger kids, and it's, you know, this situation is impacting everybody of every age. And so the question is more, I'm concerned about how to explain to a 3-year-old about coronavirus and why he can't see his friends. This person is worried that the social distancing is affecting this child. So preschoolers and older toddlers, unlike older children and teenagers, have a limited understanding of what's happening. And they don't have the same context. They certainly don't have the same language. And even the smartest 2-year-olds and smartest 3-year-olds are more going to pick up on what we do rather than what we say. And so it's really important that we give developmentally appropriate pieces of information, which really is just a fancy way of saying giving the right information for the age of the child. So your child who's 3 may not really know what's happening, but you can explain, we're staying home right now, we are working from home, I know it's really hard that you can't go to school and see your friends, and we're practicing having visits on the computer or having story time on the computer, or rather than going to the library right now, we're doing that in a different way on the computer. So sort of the essence is that you don't necessarily have to explain details about the coronavirus and a lot of information, but more see what your child, your toddler, your preschooler is demonstrating in their behavior and what they're asking about, and address that. But you still want to, before we move on, if your child is saying that they miss their friends or they're upset that they can't see their friends, it's really important to say, yeah, it is really hard that you can't see your friends right now. And then show them what you can do. So we're getting another question coming in. I love this, all these questions coming in, and we're bouncing all around. So as you're joining us, if you're just joining us now, we're talking about managing and parenting during the coronavirus crisis. And you can find a lot of our information on childmind.org/coronavirus. How do you find a school-work balance with older kids? This is a really great question. And I think what the question is asking is, how do you help your teen or your older child balance their schoolwork and social life or other life? But if it's how do you manage your own work balance, we can address both of those things. I think for a teenager or an older child who really has a lot of competing demands, like classwork from multiple places or assignments that have multiple deadlines, it can become a bit overwhelming. And I think it's really helpful to have a conversation with your older child and teenager that engages them and asks them how they think that they can manage their time best. So it doesn't mean that you're just going to leave them completely to their own devices. And certainly kids with ADHD or specific learning challenges are going to need more structure. But having a conversation with your teenager that helps them sort of outline how they envision organizing their time and how they're going to build in leisure time and break time is going to be a great starting off point. You may find that you avoid a battle if your teenager or your older child has a really good sense of how they'd like to structure their day. It might really only need a few tweaks on your end. On the other hand, if your teenager or older child is figuring they're going to start with some video game time and then they're going to hang out in their room for a while and they're really not getting to work until the end of the day, you obviously are going to want to have a lot more suggestions and direct things a little more. I'm just going to hold up, and we certainly can put this available for people. This is what I've been using every day, just a printable schedule with check boxes on one side and a time schedule on the other. That works for me because I can put in what I would need to do at what time. I actually use the same schedule for my 9-year-old, but rather than schedule things on the time part, I'm actually putting assignments with the checkbox, and we're only using the timed portions for things that are not movable, like a karate class that is going to happen at 12:45 or a Zoom meeting with the teacher. So really, really fabulous questions. Okay. Will my 1-year-old miss out developmentally because he or she can't mix with his peers? He has a 7-year-old sister, which is wonderful, but no same age company. So this is a great question. And I think it's really important to take a step back and remember a couple things. One, this is a slice of your child's life, not their whole life. So if you are interacting with your 1-year-old and your 7-year-old is interacting with your 1-year-old, that is, first of all, has lots of learning moments there. You are speaking with your 1-year-old, so you're helping reinforce their language skills. If they go to a preschool or any kind of play group and there's any available options for interaction, like a read aloud or something from the library, even though it's not physical in the room contact, it's still interaction. And I think another thing to remember with a 1-year-old or 2-year-old is they don't have to be receiving direct instruction or direct interaction with other children to benefit. So if your child is helping you put groceries away or pouring water from a cup to a cup while you're cooking, you're teaching them about what happens when you pour things out of a container or what happens when you put something small into something larger. What I mean is there are lots of teachable moments and lots of really reinforcing interactions that your baby or toddler is going to learn, even if they're not interacting with children of their own age right now. I'll just say before we move on that doesn't mean that you shouldn't look for other opportunities to FaceTime with a family member or find a play group on online where you can do sing-alongs or where your child can see pictures or moving, video of other children. But really, they're taking your lead and they're modeling from you. Okay, we have a time for a couple more questions. Okay, my sons, 5 and 9, can't seem to get along with each other. How can I bring them together to at least be able to sit at the table and do schoolwork or enjoy each other's company? Thank you. So thank you for asking this question. I am sure you are not alone in that many siblings have difficulty lots of times, and this is an additional stress. And so really we want to do a couple of things. One, know that you have to pick some of your battles. And so maybe your goal for this week is to look for any times when your 2 boys or 2 girls are interacting positively, because we want to actually praise or give positive reinforcement in kind of a 5-to-1 ratio. So we want to give constructive feedback or kind of address behaviors we don't love much less than the behaviors we do like. So what it means is you want to look for any opportunities for your boys getting along and say, oh, I love how you guys both came to the counter and put your stuff down and you have your space and you have your other space. You might say that our goal this week is to give each other personal space. And maybe that's all you really manage to look for. Or maybe you say, our goal this week is we're going to take turns picking a game, and we're going to have me against you and the boys. You and your brother are going to be a team. So I think you want to look for the positives where you can find them and really pay attention to them and maybe make a big deal. Maybe you say, we're going to keep a jar, and anytime I see you guys getting along or working together or being collaborative, we're going to put a penny in the jar. And when we get 10 pennies, it's going to equal something fun. Like kids get to pick the TV show, or we get to play a specific game. So focusing on the positive, making a specific goal and attending to that goal, those are really, really important things. Got another question. I am going to answer, I think, one more question, and then we're going to wrap up. So one question is, how can I make this time? So for some people in the United States, we're coming up on spring break. For some, every school's a little bit different, and some kids are going to be having break. And let's just face it, if you were going to go on vacation and you're not anymore, that's just very disappointing. And if your kid has been doing e-learning and then they're going to have break and they're not really going anywhere and they feel like they're missing out on a break, it's really important to first validate that disappointment. So I think we often can find ourselves trying to rationalize why it's not so bad, or try to explain why our kids should be a little bit more patient or a little bit more grateful. But it's really, really hard to do that when you feel like you don't have a spring break, or you feel like you're not getting what feels like is deserved. So the first thing is just to say, you're saying, I'm so bummed out that I'm going to be here for spring break and we were supposed to go on vacation and we're not, or I just planned on going down the street to my friends and now I can't. The first thing is acknowledge that is really hard. And before going into problem solving mode, even asking your teen, I wish that I could just make this all go away and I can't. What do you think would be one thing that would be really awesome to do during spring break? That's possible. So we can make the list of all the things that really aren't possible right now. I don't know how helpful that's going to be to us, but let's make a list of some things that might be possible. Maybe your kid says, I want to stay in pajamas all day, or I want to get to watch a movie, or I want to have a Zoom sleepover with my friend. Write those things down and see if you can come up with any solutions that are going to be sort of a little bit towards making your teen feel a little bit less like they're missing out. I want to thank you again for joining me. A couple of just key points before we wrap up. At the beginning of this podcast, or at the beginning of this Facebook Live, we started talking about single parents, and we want to remind you that we are putting resources on our Facebook group called Parenting in the Time of Coronavirus. We will also have daily schedules, some examples of activities that we'll be putting up in the coming days. We also have all our resources in our childmind.org/coronavirus. I hope that this time was helpful. Please remember that we're here every day at 10 in the morning and 4:30 Eastern Standard Time. We are looking through all of our questions, so that if your question wasn't answered this afternoon, know that we're looking through it and we will do our best to weave it into our next Facebook Lives. Check the post for our next live event. The Child Mind Institute is here to help with the mental health and parenting needs during this crisis, no matter where you are. We have resources to help, daily tips, consultations, and gold standard telehealth treatments. So go to us at childmind.org/coronavirus. Be safe and thank you.